Hi, a very good morning, everyone, and thanks a lot for joining us for today's session. My name is Nicholas, and I'm the Senior Customer Consultant from Elsevier, and I'm currently based in Singapore. In today's session, I'll be walking you through on research metrics. I'll be talking you through different research metrics that we use at, say, a journal level or at an article level, and how you can familiarize yourself with it, and how basically we are able to generate the data sets that we are looking at so that you're able to best leverage it when you're using Scopus. Today's session, I'll be talking you through the quality of journals on Scopus and why this is unique, because this creates the foundational perspective in which we're able to generate the data that we are talking about and the research metrics that we'll be talking about. The next up will be on Scopus journal and article level metrics. I'll be talking you through on the different metrics that you'll be able to see and you'll be able to leverage on, as well as key metrics within Scopus that you can look at, as well as additional questions and answers. Let's talk about the first session first. What makes Scopus really unique is not just the fact that you're able to get journal, article, and author level metrics, but also the fact that you're able to have researcher profiles, organizational profiles. You're able to have and you're able to trust the content that you're looking at because it's trusted and curated. There's in-depth structured search and in-product analytics, as well as data exports and Scopus APIs that you're able to leverage on. So with the powerful search tools, profiles, metrics, APIs, and structured data, you're able to progress, evaluate, and to reflect your institution's research activity. Scopus has over 85 million items from over 94,000 organizational profiles. We are able to create up to 17 million researcher profiles, featuring up to 3.5 million awards and over 450 funders. And how we are actually able to do this is because we're able to leverage on a whole series of technologies here, right? So we have a very unique team called the Content Selection and Advisory Board, which is comprised purely of 23 subject experts who are sitting outside of Elsevier, right? So they're independent board that basically evaluates the quality of journals that comes through. We are able to leverage on their expertise through big data technology, machine learning, using natural language processing and semantic technology to leverage on to create entity resolution. And basically, we are able to feature advanced data science. So what this comes through is because this technology passes through all the data sets that comes through to us, be it publication data, funding data, PlumX metrics, preprint server data, Medline data, as well as unpayroll data. With the information that comes through, we have about 27,000 serials, 140,000 conferences, and 253,000 books. From over 5,000 Go Open Access journals with over 18.4 million open access documents and 1.1 million preprints. Scopus is updated with up to 11,000 articles indexed every single day. So it is something very useful itself. So what this does is that we are able to support researchers across their careers, from students through to advanced researchers, instructors, faculty members, editors, team leads, where we're able to showcase trusted content, profiles, and intuitive access. How we do it is that we leverage on powerful search filters and refinement to showcase surface insights within researcher workflows. Researcher profiles will power researcher networks to advance careers. Organizational profiles are able to understand the departmental analysis, and this entire information is curated. It is multidisciplinary, featuring current global content to inspire confidence. What this does is that we are constantly improving the speed and the ease of use to showcase the signals around research, to showcase discovery and analysis. We are also able to inform evidence-based researcher and organizational evaluations by helping faculty members, team leads, librarians to basically populate reports, assessments, and to analyze it, right? So the Content Selection Advisory Board, they curate a data set of sources with strict reassessment policies, The research landscape analyzes informs policies for organizational hierarchies. There is a disambiguation technology for author and organizational names, featuring targets for completeness and correctness to continuously improve. The assessment of research landscape needs to target new data types for integration. One of you asked a very good question. What is the difference between preprints and articles in press? Very good question. So preprints, right, is the finalized author accepted manuscript before upon acceptance, before all the final edits and corrections, right? Articles in press is already the fully edited article, except that it has not been released on a journal issue yet. So these are two different stages I'll point out. So there's quite a significant difference between preprints and articles in press. One is completed with the publisher and the editor edits, and one isn't. But these are the types of questions that I'm hoping to see more of in today's session. Okay, so what we're able to see, I think, is very interesting, right? So you saw that basically we work together with over about 5,000 publishers. The 5,000 publishers, basically, we have what we call a feed, right? Where they submit on a daily basis, monthly basis, all the updated issues that they have published. So with this feed that comes through, we are able, the articles will come in, right? And we are able to break it down into probably 64 granular details of articles, book chapters, institutions, conference proceedings, co-authors, funding data, traditional metrics. So we break this down on a very granular basis, and we're able to assemble them so that you're able to get an overview of what it is that you're actually able to see on Scopus. I think this is really powerful, and this is really like the overall engine that we're talking about. So by working together with over 7,000 publishers, we are able to source it from over 105 countries and 40 languages. We also have been more historically inclusive with historical coverage back to 1788, with about 18.4 million open access documents featuring multiple regional content types, and it's updated on a daily basis. So what I think is really important and powerful here is that you're able to see the global representation in terms of titles from, say, North America, we have about 54% more than our nearest competitor. Europe and Middle East, where we have about 236% more. Western Europe with 75% more, and Southeast Asia and APAC specifically with about 2,200 titles, where we have about 265% more than our nearest competitor. This is really powerful, I think. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but what I want to emphasize is that we have a transparent Scopus selection criteria for serial content, and it comes across two stages. All titles, they need to meet all these 5 following technical criteria to be considered for Scopus review in terms of a peer review, English abstracts, publication regularity, Roman script references, as well as publication ethics statement. The titles are reviewed by the CSAB according to 14 selection criteria in terms of journal policy, content quality, journal standing, publication regularity, online availability. So these are broken down to these 14 granular details. I won't be going through them today, but this is basically what we have to go through for a journal to be indexed within Scopus first. 2 tiers of screening, one more detailed than the other as well. So we are committed to creating a representative curated data set of scholarly content. The overall journal selection is based on journal level data and performance, right? Not at the article level. And we monitor and deselect titles which are predatory or if they are below standards. The one thing that Scopus cannot intervene is the editorial autonomy of journals. Editorial decisions on the quality of individual articles and conferences is not something we do. We don't decide the content of the articles and the abstracts which are to be included in the database because we index the journals itself, right? We can't intervene in terms of a plagiarism and other publication malpractice of individual articles, nor can we intervene on the authorship of the paper. But what we can do is that if publication malpractice is happening on a structural basis without a policy to address and to prevent such cases, Scopus will flag, reevaluate, and then discontinue titles. One thing that we want to clarify is that even though some journals may seem to have low quality, with a lower than average performance, they can still be relevant to be covered in Scopus, for instance, such as niche journals, where the research published in the journals could be of high quality still, but these journals may not need to be removed from Scopus itself. Predatory journals are a threat to science and they should be avoided to be covered in Scopus. Journals that are included in Scopus would benefit from a wide global visibility and increased impact in terms of impact and quality. But this sometimes doesn't happen and the journal may become predatory with time. When making decisions about research, it's essential that the decisions are based on science that you can trust. Therefore, predatory journals are a threat to the integrity of Scopus and science in general. And because predatory publishing is ill-defined and subject to personal interpretation, the review of individual journals by academic subject experts in each field is essential, hence the Content Selection Advisory Report. So many ranking organizations, they do trust the quality of Scopus content, such as the QS World University Rankings, Times Higher Education University Rankings, NIRF, Shanghai Jiaotong, for instance. Within an APAC perspective, we've seen that universities such as Beijing University, Keio University, the Thailand Citation Index is a very strong partner and collaborator that we work with, the NRF in Korea, as well as Nanyang Technological University. In terms of a global perspective, right, we can see the University Paris-Saclay, the UK BIS, the National Science Foundation America, the European Commission, as well as the German IFQ. So these are some of the people that we collaborate with as well. Okay, but let's get to Scopus journal and article metrics, right? Because that's what you're here for today. So one thing which we believe in, two golden rules, is that we need to leverage on research metrics to get a balanced, multi-dimensional view in terms of what it is that we're looking at. I would say please always use both quantitative and qualitative input into your decisions, and always use more than one research metric as a quantitative input. Reason is simple. It's not about benefiting from the strengths. It's about benefiting from the strengths of both approaches and not about replacing one with the other. When you use a quantitative and qualitative input, this will get you closer to the full story. Intelligence is available from the points where these approaches may differ in their message. I would also say you always use more than one research metric as a quantitative input, because a research metric strengths can complement the weaknesses of others. There are many different ways of being excellent, and using multiple metrics will drive desirable changes in behavior as well. We have 12 principles of research assessment, right? Which is very simple, and it's basically a response to a call for evidence. So what we do offer is that we must offer a basket of metrics for everyone, and it has to be generated in an automated, scalable way. We need to implement and use metrics by always leveraging on judgment with metrics. We do not have a perfect or leading metric, and we should use at least two, hence a basket of metrics. The selection of metrics would differ depending on the question that is to be asked. We would have to take variables into account. We can't prevent stupidity or irresponsibility in terms of how the metrics is to be interpreted. The best practice is with the research community who judge and are judged, and they should ideally define these metrics. There is no methodological black boxes, right? Which is why our metrics are open and clear and transparent. Is independent of business and access models without any aggregation or composite metrics. Composite metrics should be avoided, and calculation methods must be freely available and not proprietary. So a single score with proprietary calculation methods will be seen as unsound. So this is something that we are committed to in terms of our 12 principles of research assessment. And this is what we can see, right? In terms of a researcher level, we can see document counts and a H index. At an article level, we can see citation counts, citations per paper, field-weighted citation impact, outputs in top quartile, citations in policy and medical guidelines, usage, captures such as bookmarks, mentions, and social media. At the journal level, we see site score, journal impact factor, Scimago journal ranking, and source normalized impact per paper. Some of you who have been using Scopus for a long time, you probably identify some of these research metrics. I think this is really powerful and useful, so take a look at it. So research metrics can be used across a whole range of approaches, right? You can analyze the strength of the research at the institution. You can determine where research is a good potential investment from. We are able to demonstrate the return on investment in terms of research money. We are able to identify rising stars amongst the research, early career researchers, and we are able to tell a better narrative about everything that is happening with regard to research. Someone has asked, are the metrics displayed, created, and generated by Scopus? The answer would be yes, because we are creating these metrics based on the data that we have over at Scopus. So for instance, Scientific Journal Report. So this metric here isn't our proprietary metric. It's owned and generated by Scientific Labs, but they generate it based on the data that we do have, right? So for instance, if you're looking at citations per paper, when you're looking at, say, from a journal level perspective, it is also generated based on the content that is indexed within Scopus itself. Someone's asked, can you have the recording? So the answer is yes, because that's why it's being recorded. You have a copy of the recording and the presentation after the session is done. This will be sent to you in an email tomorrow as well, for those of you who have signed up. So research metrics can help you to prioritize reading. For instance, the metrics that we are looking at for reading would be site score. Some of you may use journal impact factor. We have citation count and percentile benchmarking. Sometimes some of you want to know what is a recommendation for you to publish in. It'll be in site score, SJL, SNP, journal impact factor. When you want to add to your researcher profile online, what will be good and useful would be your H index, percentile benchmarking, the activity online, scholarly commentary online, social activity online, media mentions. You can also enrich your your promotion and tenureship portfolio by looking at your H index and talking about it, the percentile benchmark, scholarly activity online, scholarly commentary online, citations, as well as media mentions. You can also develop collections through SiteScore, SJL SNP, impact factor, usage and turnover data, and to benchmark a collection of research outputs through the FWCI H index, for instance. Some of you will be asking, what are the main purposes in terms of metrics? So in terms of this, we talk about the evaluating research performance, and this is typically carried out by those in a position of authority, which is relative to those being funded itself, such as a funding body or university administration, which is allocating funds, or a dean or department head deciding on which researcher to recruit or to award a tenureship to. Showcasing performance is generally conducted by those while competing for limited resources. So you want to demonstrate that you should receive funding. A research group leader may showcase their past performance to secure time on a project, like a large Hadron Collider. Administrations may want to highlight areas of outstanding performance to help to attract overseas students to the institution itself. Scenario modeling in terms of a potential outcome can happen, such as fantasy football. Sometimes you need to understand how recruiting Dr. A rather than Dr. B would impact the team's performance, the financial implications to combine linguistics and language, or a university administration considering how to restructure the physics and chemistry schools. Also for rankings, right? So we are able to see that metrics is being leveraged across a whole range of different perspectives, and we find that this is really powerful. So what could research metrics help to demonstrate? In this case, we can stop from education impact, societal impact, commercial impact, innovation, information impact, academic impact, and promotion in terms of attention, right? So number of times it's been viewed on and played on YouTube, the citations in terms of a health policy or news mentions, in terms of patent citations or academic in terms of partnerships, the number of patents filed and granted, Wikipedia mentions or blog mentions, downloads, citations, collaborators, social media metrics, right? These are some of the metrics that can be demonstrated. When we look at, say, policy citations, it's also useful because now you're able to see policies from different types of organizations like nonprofit organizations or government agencies or NGOs or think tanks, right? And documents could be from guidelines, white papers, monographs, pamphlets, articles, books, etc. So some of you will be asking questions ready, but I think maybe a good way to make it more dynamic and interactive is for you to describe a use case in which metrics can be useful to you, right? So you can feel free to type them in the chat box. So in this case, some of you will be asking as well, and some of you have asked earlier, you wanted some clarification because there is an argument in terms of the credibility of SJR versus other metric. So the SJR metric that you see over here, so the metric is developed by Sains Labs, as I mentioned earlier. It's not owned by Elsevier, but it's generated through the Scopus data that we provision to Sains Labs, and this is where they generate the overall prestige metric known as SJR. We will be talking about this more as well. So yeah, feel free to type in the chat box, right? In which cases in your daily work that you're actually leveraging on Scopus metrics. So don't be shy. Some of you were typing earlier. Just type them in the chat box in that case. The Q&A box, my apologies. Some of you have been using it for grant application. That's great. Collaboration, that's also really useful and powerful. Citation scores, deciding on the journal and papers that you guys would like to cite for your theses. These are actually very, these are excellent use cases as well. To decide which author to follow as well. That's good. Of course, the affiliation would be very important as well. That's great. We have actually had very good, clear use cases that we are talking about. And so let's go on further, right, to talk to you about key metrics that you can identify within Scopus itself. So later during the session itself, I'll be doing a live demonstration in terms of all the metrics that you can take a look at in Scopus and some of the use cases, right? But let's walk you through on some of the key metrics that we are looking at. First and foremost will be site score. This is a metric which gives a very comprehensive, transparent, and current view in terms of a journal's impact. The 2022 site score, 21 site score was just completed and it was launched maybe about 1 to 2 months ago. So this is very fresh. We leverage on a 4-year citation window and it's calculated using data from Scopus to validate citation received by journals and proceedings, to give them information, to give users information on where they may want to publish in. SNP is what we call a source normalized impact per paper, and this is developed by the University of Leiden. It measures contextual citation impact by weighting citations based on the total number of citations within a subject field. So this is what we call a normalization effect. So we're comparing apples to apples and oranges to oranges now, right? Because when we're looking at, say, a paper from chemistry, it's completely different from, say, something like social science, right? And which is why we probably want to normalize it so that people understand what it is that we're comparing about. The impact of a single citation is given higher value in subject areas where citations are less likely and vice versa. Next one, we Sains Journal Ranking, SJR. We talked about this a bit earlier. This is what we call a prestige metric, which can be applied to journals, book series, as well as conference proceedings. With the SJR, the subject field, quality, and the reputation of the journal have a direct effect on the value of a citation. And this is a readily understandable scoring scale with an average of 1 for easy comparison. Another thing which we wanted to talk about, which I think is very important, is to showcase multiple metrics to compensate for weaknesses. So some of you probably see a few weighted citation impact. Some of you would see citations per publications, right? So FWCI, field weighted citation impact, is a metric that we have leveraging on over at Scopus. I think this is really, really good. I really like it. What it does, it compensates for differences in field, type, and age. It has a meaningful benchmark which is built in, where 1 is the global average for a subject area or topic. The cons of this approach is that people may not like small numbers. It may seem complicated and difficult to validate, and people don't know the idea of magnitude because you don't know how many citations it exactly represents. So citations per publications on Scopus, on the other hand, is a large number, which is simple and easy to validate, and it communicates the magnitude in terms of activity that we are looking at. What is affected by will be differences in field, types, and age. Is meaningless because you don't know what the global average is, right? So the built-in 1 for benchmarking is something which I find particularly useful and impactful, right? And this gives you now, when you look at a paper, you can see the total number of citations and the field weighted citation impact. You know what is the scale that we are looking at. You know what is the global standard. You get to know what's the overall benchmark that we're comparing to. The SciScore 2021 methodology counts the citations from papers in 2018 all the way to 2021, right? The sources and the citations are of the same categories in terms of articles, reviews, conference papers, book chapters, as well as data papers. And it is divided. So we are looking at the citations from these 5 sources in 2018 to 2021, and it's divided by the number of publications published in 2018 to 2021. So we also have a SciScore tracker, which uses the same methodology with citations based on the latest 2022 data itself. So let's take a look at different types of metrics, right? We can take a look at article level metrics, which quantify the reach and the impact of published research. Article level metrics would incorporate data from news sources such as social media mentions, together with citations to present a rich picture of how an individual article is being discussed, shared, and used. So we look at citations, the field weighted citation impact, PlumX metrics. So we can see that this one here with 3 citations in this particular category is ranking the 83rd percentile. It's at 1.69, which is about 69% higher than global average. We can see it's trending very strongly in terms of readers, news mentions, blog mentions. Citations will be a bit less, but we can see that this is trending very strongly in terms of social media, as well as likes, shares, and comments itself. No, so I would say SciScore 2022 would be from 2019 onwards, right? So it's 2019, 20, 21, and 22. We're using essentially a 4-year window itself. So the difference between SciScore 2021 is that this is a fixed metric. 2022 essentially is what we call a live metric, so that we can constantly see how well the journal is performing as of the moment itself. But these are good questions. Excellent. Feel free to just keep popping them in the Q&A box. I think it's much more fun that way when I'm able to engage with you directly this way. So citations itself will count the number of times the particular article is used as a reference. The more the citations are received, the more published the article will be referred to your article, and you can leverage on the knowledge that you have built. So the article that I was referring to was this one. When James Bond released the recent movie, and this was No Time to Die, and it's basically an in-depth analysis of his exposure to infectious agents. So this is, of course, like meant to be a fun study that was actually published, which is why you get to see only 3 citations, but we can see that it's trending very strongly in terms of social media, right? This is just something for thought. This is something which my colleagues and I also talked about earlier as well last year. So you can see the number of papers that have cited this work. You can say which papers have cited this work. And I think this is actually quite useful as well to see. So we talk about FWCI and how well the citedness is when compared to similar documents. One is the global average. So it takes into account the year of publication. a 3-year window, the document type, as well as the disciplines associated with the source itself. Give me 1 second. So with all the metrics that you can, we are able to help researchers to showcase accomplishments, to explore collaborators, and to inform funding and promotional proposals with the best-in-class researcher profiles. With this author, we are able to see the document counts, the citation counts, as well as the H index. We can see a H index graph. We can analyze the author output and the citations overview tracker as well. You can export it to SciFile if you have access to. One thing which I like the most would actually be the topic page. So with the topics itself, we are able to see which category this author is getting very strong in. Another one that you're able to see from this profile page is that you'll be able to link to ORC ID, right? So ORCID. So if you have a profile, please feel free to link it from ORCID to Scopus so that everything can be kept as clean as possible. And I understand that sometimes most of you would have questions. Do select the edit profile page, because when you are able to edit a profile, you're able to reflect all the changes that you like to make. You'll be able to showcase the most accurate and updated version of your author profile on Scopus itself. So Scopus helps to showcase excellence with an array of metrics. You can demonstrate your institution's research impact. And we are able to give you the details behind it so that you can trust how the numbers are being derived, such as, for instance, site score. So the other one which I like a lot would be PlumX. So PlumX essentially is a comprehensive item level metrics which showcases insights in the way that people will be able to interact with individual pieces of research output. When you visualize scholarly engagements, you'll be able to showcase 5 categories of metrics, and this is used to communicate engagement without a score. The 5 categories would be, say, usage, captures, mentions, social media, as well as citations. Usage, you can see clicks, downloads, views, library holdings, and videos played. Captures, you'll be able to see bookmarks, quote forks, favorites, readers, and watchers. Mentions will be in terms of blog posts and Wikipedia links. Social media will be +1s, likes, shares, tweets. Citations will be citation indexes, pattern indexes, as well as clinical citations. So note, these 5 colors comes in green, purple, yellow, blue, and red, right? And I like to call this a 5-leaf clover because we are using this to communicate engagement without a score, right? So this is how it looks like. We can see in this case, citations is only 3, but there's a lot of social media traction coming to it, which is why it's a larger blue. We can see that there's quite a bit of it in mentions and captures, not so much in terms of, say, in terms of captures per se, right? So that's something that we probably notice as well. So the citation is very small. So when you're able to take a look at this, right, it's really a 5-leaf clover. You get to know how well the article is doing. You get to know and track it instinctively. Okay, this is very interesting. It doesn't have that many citations, but it's been shared many times. It's probably a very fun read, for instance. So one thing which I think is really powerful is how you're able to leverage this to showcase the evidence. So most of us will be most of the time you probably want to put in, I'm an author. This is my, from 2012, this is my title and my journal name. I have 17 citations, 9 mentions on Twitter, 125 Mendeley bookmarks or 2 blog mentions. But I want to encourage you to go a step further, right? So from this itself, I can say that I have 17 citations, but this is top 5% on economics research within Scopus itself, right? You need to contextualize it. In terms of an international impact, it's been mentioned, bookmarked, or viewed in over 40 countries, according to this particular source. The paper has been covered by 10 media outlets worldwide, including the BBC and the Wall Street Journal. It was recommended in X and Y economics research blogs and was described in tweets by prominent Professor Jones as a significant step forward in our understanding. So now that you're able to leverage this, we get to contextualize the overall impact of the work that we are talking about. I can't begin to emphasize how crucial this is, because now people will be able to understand the significance of the research and the contribution that you have made. So the mentions and social media data source is probably a combination of Twitter, and we'll pull it in through this, what we call PlumX, which is called alternative metrics. And yes, it is accessible via Scopus itself. I would say that the author evidence that we are talking about is how you want to present it in your promotion and tenureship, or within the CV itself, or when you're applying for grants, etc. So that's something that you can definitely update on. Within the author profile page, this is not something that you can update because we don't give you these parameters, but what I would encourage you to do when you're at the author profile page on Scopus would be firstly to actually update the latest publications that is indexed within Scopus. And this is something that we will encourage you to use, right? Because many people use the author profile page. I think they actually really like it. We've made a lot of improvements to it. And the author profile wizard is something that I've heard from my German researchers. That was something that they really like a lot, because it's so much easier to update the information than ever before. And this is something which I also do a lot, quite often, for my researcher friends as well. So another thing that you can also do on Scopus would be to use the journal metrics that you can find, because it's very important to make sure that you're publishing your research in a journal which is getting prominent, right? So one thing that I will always encourage you to do is to go to the sources page, go to sources, and then now you can select from the journals that you're looking at itself, right? You can select it by publisher, by title, if you're familiar with it, or a subject area. And within the subject area, there's also a sub-subject area that you can choose from too. So maybe you want to look for, say, a sub-subject area. You can also choose then to add in an additional filter from Elsevier, and you can apply all this. And then this is something that you can also take a look at. You can also filter by quality by looking at, say, you can only display, for instance, only open access journals if you want. You can showcase the titles at the top 10%, or commonly first quartile and second quartile, and then you filter it by journals itself. So the reason why you're doing this is because you want to publish your manuscript in a journal, which is indexed in Scopus in quartile 1 or quartile 2. You can choose all these additional journal level metrics itself to get more information about the journal that you want to publish in. But generally, what I like to do is to click on the journal itself to see where and how I can actually compare it to as well. Some of you would probably want to download the list as well. And this is where you can actually select the Scopus source list, and you can download this offline so that you can do your own analysis as well. This is a massive Excel spreadsheet, and I will encourage you to, if you're interested in it, feel free to do so. I think it's quite useful too. So on this page itself, right, you can explore it, because now you're able to see all the metrics that I was talking about earlier, including site score, the SNP, as well as the SJL values. You get to see the percentile, the rank, as well as the research areas. This is something I'll encourage you to do, because now you're able to contextualize the overall impact in terms of the metrics that we have talked about earlier. The title itself will give you a lot of information. For instance, you are able to see who the publisher is. You get to see the coverage years. Very crucially, you get to see the ISSN, the journal homepage, as well as the subject areas in which this journal falls under, right? So we have over 333 sub-subject areas. We try to make it as granular as possible, because we know that there's different umbrellas and topics that we want to cover, right? So this is why we go to the level of detail that we have. So for instance, this particular article journal itself would be so one thing I'll point out too is that within here on site score itself, you get to see and calculate it accordingly, right? In terms of the total number of citations divided by the total number of documents. Within the site score tracker itself, this is something like the live version, right? So we can see the number of citations to date and the documents to date itself. what I would like to point you towards is that you need to put it down in terms of a category perspective. We get to see this is ranked 31 out of 288 journals within finance, while at the same time, based on the site score, this is ranked 86 out of 661, right? So I would point out that each subject area, each top sub-subject area would have different performance, and because of the journals which are classified to it, we compare like to like, right? So the percentages would not exactly be similar 100%, but you'll be able to calculate it and to understand how we have been able to derive it as well. So now you're able to select the research area to compare accordingly, and then you're able to take a look at the other journals within this category itself as well, and to see the overall performance. So if you want to, you can also compare sources over here under the advanced search to compare one journal to the other based on a whole range of metrics like site score, SJR, SNP, citations by year, documents by type, percentage not cited, and the percentage review of articles on a year-by-year basis. I really like the percent not cited score because this will give you a context into how many percent of a journal where it's not being cited by anyone, right? So ideally, when you as an early career researcher, you want to publish in a journal where the percent not cited is as low as possible, because it means that everyone is really reading the journal at an article level, right? So it just means that the likelihood of you being cited, even though you may be relatively unknown, will be quite high. So for instance, what we can do to give you a context over here is that under, for instance, this blue here has the highest citation counts, but it's also probably due to the fact that the number of documents is also the highest, right? In terms of a site score publication by year, we can see that red has a number of highest number in terms of site score. We can see in terms of a source SNP value is quite similar itself. The journals we are looking at have received expected citations more than the average, and it's being based on SJR itself, they're very similar profiles too. The percent not cited showcase that blue and the green journals have a low percent of documents not cited. Red is actually quite low as well. And we get to see the number of review papers. And we get to see, because red journal has a high number of review articles, it probably also justifies and explains its overall performance. So we talked a lot earlier about SJR, right? And people want to know more about SJR. So SJR itself uses Scopus as a data source for the development of the indicator because it best represents the overall structure of world science at a global level. What it does look is that it looks at the prestige of a journal by considering the sources of citations to it, rather than the popularity as measured by counting all journal citations equally. Now, each citation received by a journal is assigned a weight based on the SJR of the citing journal. A citation from a journal with a high SJR value is worth more than a citation from a journal with a low SJR value. Citations coming from highly important journals are henceforth more valuable, and they'll give you more prestige to the journals which receive it. And it also normalizes for citations, citation behavior among subject fields. For instance, life science would have high citations and many citations. One citation showcases represents lower value as compared to arts and humanities, where there are less citations, but one citation in this case represents higher value. So all in all, right, we talk about many things, but crucially, expert opinion and research metrics are needed to fully describe research performance. This is why the Scopus content selection and advisory board is so crucial to what it is that we do. The basket of metrics is a menu which contains diverse metrics for all entities. Metrics relevant to your question should be selected from the basket for both the entities which you're investigating and for suitable peers. Research metrics enable showcasing, evaluation, and the profiling of use cases to support more information on decision making, and we should use all the evidence that are available to be clear and specific to build a coherent narrative to provide context itself. So, okay, I have been talking quite a fair bit itself, but let me stop talking and on the slides itself, and I actually want to start showcasing, say, a live view on Scopus. So let me know when you guys are able to see my screen. In the meantime, I would ask you to encourage you to type in the Q&A box if you have any questions with regards to, any queries that you may have. So just now when I was saying for young researchers is that you may want to publish in a journal with a low percentage not cited score. I'll showcase this in just a bit. So, all right, we've talked about quite a fair bit of information, right? But let's take a look at, say, articles. Okay, so COVID-19 was obviously a huge topic for everyone recently over the past 3 years. So let's take a look at the most highly impactful paper that we are talking about over here. So we can sort it by, say, the highest cited. And this will be one of the first publications, right? The clinical features of patients infected with 2019 COVID in Wuhan, China. This was published in the Lancet earlier on in 2020 itself. It's been cited by about 24,000 documents. We can see that there's an update notice. We can see who are the researchers who are publishing it from. We get to see that this is has an insane FWCI of 3,360. Because with 24,000 citations, it obviously places this all the way at the top, right? And then we can take a look at all additional metrics that we can take a look here. We see that there's a drop-down box. We can find that there's more metrics, and then we click on this. And then we can see this is what we call the metric details, right, over here. For some reason, PlumX isn't loading this, so I find this very interesting. Yeah, maybe this is possibly a data as of the moment. So we'll take a look at this as it comes along. I mean, if any of you have any topics, that you'd like me to take a look at, feel free to type them in the chat box. And in this live demo session, I'll be very happy to demonstrate it to you. Community of inquiry. Okay, so this is something I'm not familiar with. Let me see what we can find. So you need to explain to me if this is if this topic, what I have searched for, is exactly as what you're looking for, right? So we find that there's quite a fair bit of information. One of the highest cited articles was in a critical inquiry in a text-based environment, conferencing in higher education. We have another one where we're looking at its transformative potential in terms of higher education itself. Got it. So what I can do and what I would suggest is that we can filter it by the most recent papers in the past 3 years. Let's take a look from 2020, 2021, and 2022 itself. So we get to see a couple of things here. First and foremost, the online learning and emergency remote teaching and opportunities and challenges in emergency situations. This was one very big one. And then another one would be about e-learning and a systematic language review. So let's take a quick look at these two articles. And this makes perfect sense, right? Because these are obviously very important papers, and these are probably the trending areas when it comes to learning as well in the past few years. So the first one we can see is being written from the Institution for Research on Population and Social Sciences from the National Research Council in Rome and Italy. This has 137 citations with an FWCI of 42.15, right? So we get to see this in this case, how you're able to construct a community of inquiry. What I really like is that with this here, now you are able to see where the keywords are being highlighted itself on Scopus 2. So now you can see that this is how it looks like in terms of a Scopus metrics. We can see the PlumX metrics as well. So the number of citations, number of captures, number of mentions in terms of references, Wikipedia blogs, and on social media, under shares, likes, as well as on Facebook itself, right? And you'll be able to pass through all this itself. I think it's quite useful. You get to see how it's blocked, the number of mentions on Wikipedia itself, etc. So I do think this is really powerful and very useful. I will encourage everyone to take a look at PlumX if you haven't done so yet. The other one we are taking a look at will be on this paper. This has quite a number of collaborations from the Department of Education Sciences, from the University of Extremadura in Spain, from the University of Atamaca in Chile, and the University of Santiago in Ecuador, right? We can see over here in this case under metrics itself. This is rank 92 citations, placing this in the 98th percentile is an FWCI of 6.6. We can see all this on PlumX again. And we can compare accordingly, right? So the other thing that I wanted to bring your attention to is that let's take a look at a different thing. Let's take a look at, say, the details of the sources of this particular journal itself, right? So first and foremost, we can see that this has been published from 2009 to present. It's published under MDPI. And this journal itself has, under social sciences, it trends quite strongly when it's under, when it's ranked 99th percentile, 99th out of 247 itself. We can see that it has a CITES score of 5 in 2021 because it has about 181,000 citations from 36,000 documents. The CITES score 2022 tracker showcases that it's about 178,000 citations to 37,000 documents to date. Then you may want to start taking a look at the rank and score, right? So maybe if you're interested in, say, sustainability, in geography, defense, and planning, or if there's any other topics, right? Let's say you're interested in renewable energy and sustainability of the environment, you can select this itself. We can browse through the other 215 journals within this category too, right? So we can take a look at nature energy. We can see that this is ranked #1 in energy and energy engineering and power technology, renewable energy, fuel technology, electronic opticals, and magnetics research, right? So you get to see a very strong, powerful rank and trend over here, right? And I encourage you to take a look at this. If you're interested in it, you can go to the Scopus related coverage. You can take a look at, say, maybe the documents in 2021. We can see what the newest papers are, or the top most cited papers are. And this is actually something that you can really start browsing through to see the overall impact, or the top journals, the top articles in this particular journal itself. And yeah, this gives you a very good view too. So some of you have been asking, how do you know the quartile from the journal search results itself, right? Okay, I'm going to go back by one page. Well, a couple of pages at least. So under nature energy, first and foremost, we can see that this is ranked #1 out of 235, right? Because we're ranking it based on the CITES score itself. We showcase how we are able to calculate CITES score. And then with all the CAD subject areas, what we do is we compare the CITES score from the journals within the subject areas so that we're comparing apples to apples and oranges to oranges. In this case, we can see that there are 235 journals within energy, engineering, and power technology. What we can see is that based on the CITES score, nature energy is ranked #1 out of the 235 journals there. So hopefully this answers your question. So how do you identify the quartile of a journal in which you have found highly cited papers on a particular topic? So I would say this actually goes down a few areas, right? So what you need to do is that when you find that particular paper, you may want to take a look at that specific journal, right? So for instance, you can see that what I did over here was to search for that particular paper. From that particular paper itself, I was able to select the journal in which it was published under, right? So in this case, sustainability, and then you click on it, and this gives you and brings us to the next couple of pages that I was demonstrating on. I would say at the end of the day, as a researcher, you know which are the journals in your subject field which are the ones that most of your community usually reads. But if not, right, then this is a very good way for you to start exploring your field. So you would probably know a couple of classic seminal papers, right, within your area. Some of you have given me, say, pre-heat treatment of Carica papaya. So I guess in this case, what we are looking for, right, would be on Carica papaya in the first place. So let's go back to Scopus. I'm actually running out of time. So this is the last live example that I'll be running. So if I do to take a look at Carica papaya, I'll be able to see that there is a different type of, there's a whole range of information, right? The most seminal one is the value of plants used in traditional medicine for drug discovery. This was cited about 2,000 over times, sorry, by 1,258 times. We can see this is under environmental health perspectives, published from the University of Illinois in Chicago. And this is actually a very old paper, right? So what I normally like to do is take a look at the most recent papers. Let's take a look at 2020 to 2022, how limited. So we have a Journal of Colloid and Interface Science. If I'm not mistaken, this journal would be, so this is published first and foremost. One second. By the Chongqing University, Zhejiang Key Laboratory, and Beijing Jiaotong University. We can see that the number of citations and metrics when we click on that is quite significant. This places this in the the FWCI of 34.56 is 8 view counts and been trending quite actively on PlumX itself. And this is a journal that's published within Elsevier. We can see itself is ranked 6 in material sciences based on surface coatings and films. And then it really boils down to like what's the nature of the study itself. And yeah, like what is it meant to be? So in this case, papaya leaves as an extract is a novel eco-friendly corrosion inhibitor. So this places this within surface coatings and films. So it really boils down to what is the nature of the study, what are the topics that you're looking at, and then it really boils down to like which journal you want to actually get published in, right? So the metrics used is actually very wide, it's very varied, it's very powerful, and I would encourage you to actually really think about this in all of your use cases. Okay, so we're running short on time, so I'm just going to showcase to you a couple of things, final things. So we've been running a very active list of workshops together with my colleague Sander, right? We've done a whole bunch of them. So the next couple of last two for the year will be in terms of a preprints, topics, and funding acknowledgements, as well as the United Nations SDGs, right? So this is what we're actually running for the Malaysia Scopus Consortium. For those of you who are interested, you can still go to the Scopus blog and Twitter blog. You'll be able to find updates there. You'll be able to get information when you go to scopus.com, and you'll be able to find the Scopus librarian guides. So what we have done with USM is that we have developed a very customized program in terms of the sessions, as well as the monthly sessions that we've been having for quite some time now. The customer consultants that we support over at USM will be myself, as well as my colleague Sander. We're both senior consultants. We've been with Elsevier for a long enough time, so feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions. I've talked about Journal Finder. So for those of you who are always curious to find out about which journal to publish in, the Elsevier Journal Finder is very powerful. It uses a smart search technology and few of research vocabularies to match your article. Put in your title, abstract keywords, search it, refine it, and you'll be able to find the journals which are probably specific to your article and how you can get them published within an Elsevier journal itself. This entire program is actually supported on the Researcher Academy. So if you go to researcheracademy.elsevier.com, you'll be able to find a whole range of information through research preparation, writing for research, the publication process, the peer review, and how you can communicate your research. So I would say last but not least, please complete the survey using the following link or the QR code. How you rate it is important to us, and hopefully you enjoyed this training session, and we hope to see you soon. So for those of you who can't scan it or can't access it, let me copy and paste this for you within the chat box itself, and let me know if you can download this. I have actually been listing a whole bunch of webinars. So I believe Jack Ramla would have a copy of all the sessions that I've copied and hosted it. So yeah, you should be able to have a copy of it as well if you push librarians. So yeah, I would say in the meantime, thank you for the session itself. It was very good. Thank you for coming over and asking me all these very good questions. I hope that you found it useful, right? And you'll be able to integrate it in your workflow. So thank you so much. I hope you were able to really benefit from this session. My apologies for not having a chat box and that you have to use a question and answer box. It's probably something in the setting, so my apologies there. But thank you so much. Stay safe. I'll see you all very soon. So thank you. Take care. Bye.